Hello everyone! In this video, I'm going to be going over expert tips and ideas for separation training. Now, it's important to understand that all dogs are different and require a different behavior modification plan depending on the dog's personality, their previous life experience, their genetics, and their time in the womb with their mother and early life experiences. So I suggest that you watch this video and the other videos that I've linked, but there are also experts that can help you one-on-one. I have a friend here in San Diego, Tina Flores, and she does online lessons through Melina DeMartini's program of separation anxiety, where you can work one-on-one with a trainer on your dog's issues. So I suggest checking out those links below if you're struggling and you need some expert help to get you through this problem with your dog. In this video, I'm going to be giving tips and ideas that I find can really boost your dog's confidence and even desire to be on their own or be in a confined area. So some dogs, they might have anxiety about being left just by themselves. So if there's another dog there, they're fine. Other dogs, there might be one specific human family member that if that human leaves, then they're panicked, even though the rest of the family is still there. So that can be very frustrating, but it can also be very beneficial for training because those family members can not only observe the dog's behavior, but reinforce the dog. There's a human being there that can help out with the training. So that actually makes it a little bit easier than when the dog is fearful of just everyone leaving. I've lived with many dogs with separation anxiety myself, and I've worked with a lot of clients with these issues over the years. Tug, my terrier, is a very interesting one because if my dog, you're probably wondering, why do I have so many border collies? There are many reasons, because I love them, but he does so well with the border collie. So it was just Splash. I had Splash, my older border collie who's now passed, and if I left the house and Splash was there, he did so well. No anxiety. I could leave him like 8 to 10 hours. Not that I would, but like in an emergency situation, I could leave him as long as, humanly possible in an emergency, and I'd come back and it was as though I had been there because Splash was there. So when I leave Tug with a border collie, he's fine. So I do actually work, and this is one of the tips, I do actually work on him being separated from time to time because it does happen. Say, for example, he's at the vet or something like that. So he has to be separate from the family and from everybody else. So it's really important to work on that. If you have a dog that you're using the fact that there's a human always home or a dog that's always home, say maybe you have retired parents, they're living in your house, and you just assume they're always going to be able to be there to watch your dog for you. So in an emergency situation, like having to go to the ER, it's going to save your dog a lot of stress if you work on the issue. One of the reasons that I'm making this video is the other day when I went out for a walk, I opened the door and only 5 of my dogs came out with me because it was a very cold morning, and my little Chihuahua who I adopted as a little puppy because the person who owned her could not deal with her anxiety about being left alone. She didn't want to come on the walk. She preferred to stay home. And so I left. I was gone like an hour and a half. I come back and she's just sleeping on the couch. And then I thought, it just could be a fluke that it was really cold. And then a few days later, the same thing happened again, where I wanted to go for a walk when it was really cold and she preferred to stay home. And it was just one of those wonderful moments where all that training that I did right at the beginning, paid off for life, because it was really just the first 30 days that I hyper-focused on training her. And then I've just been reaping the results ever since, so the next 16 years. So if you have a little puppy that you're working with, I highly suggest that you that you sit down, you get in touch with the trainer, you write a behavior modification plan, and you really focus on working on the issue. Because if you just try and see if just leaving the dog alone and they might get better, they might rehearse screaming and barking and howling and destroying things and panicking, so they start to associate you leaving with this really, really traumatic experience that can keep coming back. So if a dog rehearses a behavior, it's more likely to come back in the future in their behavioral repertoire than if they never rehearsed it at all. And that is one of the reasons that I like to use something called errorless learning, which in fact, the dogs do make errors, but they're making very small errors because you're breaking up the criteria into small achievable steps where they're not getting overly stressed. So you start to see the dog get a little stressed, then you can modify the plan rather than the dog having a terrible reaction because they got left when you went to the grocery store, and then when you're back, the couch is destroyed, the curtains are ripped up, or the dog is broken their canine teeth off because they tried to get out of a crate or something like that. Anyway, so one of the tips that really worked with my little dog, and I'm leading up to that because of the story about how she preferred to stay home, is using something reinforcing to the dog to make them prefer to be away from you. So what I did, and actually I already had it for my little Chihuahua Kiko, is a heated bed. So it's actually warmer than my lap. And when she found out about that, she would prefer to go into the heated bed in my bedroom than be with me. So really, it sounds mean, but you can sit in the most uncomfortable room in your house. Make it really uncomfortable for your dog. Don't go in your office, make sure there's like no dog beds if they love cushy dog beds. And then let your dog choose to go into, to walk around and find out it's not comfortable, and then they're gonna go and seek out that heated bed. So along with these tips, you wanna make sure that you're training your dog and reinforcing your dog in training sessions to choose their bed and to go lay down on their bed and to settle, as well as choose their pen and lay in their pen and what to do when home alone or when you walk away. So I'll link a video in the description below on how to train that. I have an actual video on how to train those specific things. But once you've reinforced it, the dog thinks, oh, there's nothing to lay on in here, I'll go in the other room. And then the dog is being reinforced for leaving you and going and finding a better, something better where they're alone. The other thing is companionship. Sometimes a head start is having the dog with another dog. So with Epic, I actually used Kiko, my other Chihuahua, and I would leave her in a pen with Kiko, who has amazing, who's amazing about being left home alone. When she did start to get dementia, it changed. But when I had gotten Epic, she was doing really well. So leaving your dogs with other dogs that are safe for the dog, physically safe, they're not going to hurt them or not overexcite them or teach them some other undesirable behavior, but also great at being left alone. So not everybody has a dog like that. Another idea is if you have a large family, a large quantity of the family leaves and one person stays home with the dog. So you're working on just a smaller, a small step towards the entire family leaving. As you can imagine, I have lots of dogs, so it's very different when many of the dogs are gone and there's just one dog or two dogs at home. So I vary. I take my dogs out for different outings and split them up in groups and differ the groups so that they're being left home with different dogs rather than the same dogs. And it's very sad that I lost 2 dogs last year, but because I'd done all this training about the dogs being okay with other dogs, none of my dogs really suffered or mourned or felt that loss that the one dog just disappeared, because I really did work on them being separated. So Tug, my little guy who was really attached to Splash, my border collie who passed, he did really well and adjusted really, really nicely after she left us. Okay, so getting on to some more tips. If you don't have a dog that's seeking warmth, you might have a dog like a husky or a shepherd or a dog with a thick coat and you live somewhere that's warm, or maybe you crank your heater because it's winter. So you're leaving the dog in a place where they seek cool. So they might go under a couch to seek the cool tile under there. There might be a table they go under. There might be a tile area around your fireplace somewhere that they seek. Maybe it's the bathroom that they go to that they really love. So the same with the heated bed idea. You can begin by sitting near that area. So they lay down, they get real comfortable, and what you do is you get up, you move away a few steps, and then you come back and sit. So you're sitting near them, you walk away, come back, walk away, come back, walk away, come back. And at first they might be like, oh my gosh, she's walking away. But then you come back. And then you can get to the point where you can walk away and come back. And what they really want is that nice, cool area or the heated bed that they're at. And they know that you're going to come back. So, then you just increase the amount of time that you leave and come back. But you're habituating them to the fact that when you leave, you come back. You're not reinforcing them specifically with food or something like that, but you are reinforcing them by returning while they're still relaxed. So they're relaxed, you've returned, so you're reinforcing them with your company, but they're also being reinforced with the cool feeling underneath them or the heated bed that's very comfortable. So you can do that idea. And then when you do leave them in a pen, you leave them with something cool to lay on or the heated bed. Now, if you're worried about a heated bed home alone, they do have, you can set it up so the heat is underneath like a grate, metal grate of a what is it called? Of a crate, and the cord is protected, and then there's a bed on top, so they're not going to chew on it. But if you're really worried about the dog chewing on it, you could start it out with like a heated, some heated pet pad that you heat up in the microwave, and then you make sure it's not going to cook your dog, but then it's not going to electrocute your dog if you have that worry. I know some people have that worry. Okay, so one of my real big game changer tips that worked so well for my ex-wife's dogs and also for Epic is using your car as the first step for leaving them and returning. So, my ex-wife, she has 2 sight hounds. She had one sight hound that had never been left alone for 4 years, and finally, when we had made success where the dog could be left for 4 hours, we got another sight hound that had the same issue. So we had the same issue again. And it was really exhausting to suddenly have no life. So I know where you guys are at. And so also the wonderful thing is they would trigger each other. And for those 2 dogs, it was just my ex-wife they were attached to. So I could sit and feed them treats while she left, and I could work on, it was almost like I didn't exist. It makes you feel great, but it was very helpful for the training. Those dogs, as well as Epic, using the car as the first place to leave them is really, really beneficial, because most puppies and adult dogs, if you haven't left them in the car, most people don't leave their dogs in the car. Some people might to rush into a store if they live in a country that's freezing, like Sweden or something like that. But most people won't leave their dogs in the car because they're worried they'll get stolen or something bad will happen. So the car, they have a prehistory of you always being in there, and most people ignore their dogs because they're driving. So you don't have any of those superstitious behaviors that you're doing when your dog is anxious. Also, if you've really worked on crate training, the dog is settled in the crate. So you have that you worked on. So this, using the car, it also requires that you teach your dog to settle in a crate, and the crate is in the car. If you have a helper, of course, that's way easier to drive and have a helper train your dog. I'm not suggesting you should train your dog as you're driving, but say you're on your street or your driveway or where your car is parked, you get in your car, you ignore your dog, you could even turn the engine on, you reinforce your dog in the seat that they're in their crate. If you have a puppy, maybe they're in a little tiny baggie or crate in the front while you're parked. If you think that's unsafe, you can put it in the back when you're actually driving and work on that. But the first step is just sitting next to the puppy, or maybe you're sitting in the back seat, feeding through the crate and reinforcing the puppy for settling. You could read a book, you could do whatever you want, listen to music, a podcast, turn on the radio. And then once your puppy or adult dog is relaxed, laying in the crate, you're going to get out of the car and then get immediately back in. So you get out of the door, come back in, get out of the door, come back in. And the great thing about a car is they can see you through all the windows. So you could walk around the car, come back in, go around the other way, come back in. And so for Epic, my little Chihuahua, I would put her in the car, in the crate. We would drive to a park to walk my other dogs, and I'd have her in a backpack because I couldn't leave her alone. I could leave her, with friends or family to sit her while I was gone, but I had her in a backpack, walked her with my dogs, and one of the steps to being away from me was that she was on my back. So she knew I was there because my arms were there, but it was one of those small approximations of being alone, is that she, all the other dogs were ahead and she was looking out from behind. So having her own private time, but we were there. So that's one option, a backpack, to get those dogs used to a mini step towards being comfortable being by themselves. Another thing is when I would drive out my driveway, the first time I got out of the car to open the front gate and then close it to get the car through, that small amount of time of opening the gate and getting back in the car, she panicked. So I was running or putting the backpack on my back to open the gate, drive through, put the backpack back, drive through, put the backpack on, go and close the gate, get back in the car. And every morning and every evening we'd do the same thing. And then she gradually, over a few days, she realized, oh, she's getting out, she's getting back in, she's getting out, she's getting back in, she's not leaving. So it's really about convincing the dog that you're coming right back. And when they start to be comfortable with that step, that's when you start increasing the time. If your dog is panicked at that first moment you leave, if you stay away, they're not going to be like, oh, I love this. This is fun. I love being by myself. Very unlikely that's going to happen unless you have a very happy-go-lucky puppy, and then congratulations. So there are situations where you get a happy-go-lucky puppy and they're just a little bit whiny. Like they whine. You notice they're whining a lot just walking around. You put them in a crate or a pen and you're sitting next to them. They whine a little bit and then they do their own thing and they relax and they're happy. And then you think to yourself, oh, it was just a little whining. Maybe they only whine a couple times and then it goes away. But if you did have a dog that's very vocal and they're not worried, you might always have the problem that they're making some noise. If like whining and barking for treats. If you don't want the behavior, don't let it happen. So there are times where the barking and the whining could happen. Oh well. But the idea is that you then go back and create a behavior modification plan where you can get the behavior starting right from the start. You want the puppy going in and choosing to play with his toys or lay on his bed without whining first. Because if the whining always happens first, it's going to become a behavior chain of go in, whine, and then be okay. Or you go to work, the dog whines and barks and then calms down. And maybe it only takes them a few seconds or minutes or whatever. But if you're in an apartment, that neighbor next to you that's sleeping might not like that very much. So I think it's really important to try right from the start, really try hard to create a positive association and teach your dog to become confident when being left on their own. I hope these tips were helpful for your training. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button. See you later.